If you're someone who auto-updates their app and completely forgets about it, you might want to listen up. I have never been a big fan of auto-updating any apps, mainly because the cynic in me thinks there's much more drastic that goes on behind the scenes than what we're exposed to. Look, I know it's such a convenient way to actually auto-update all the apps and have the latest version ready every time you wake up or whenever it's available. But what if I tell you that auto-updating app is actually doing more harm than good to your apps, to your phone, and to some of your personal data? Despite me telling you to not auto-update the apps, last year I made the biggest mistake of updating my Sonos app without actually reading the changelog, and it backfired massively. It's a whole different story, and I have a separate video in my channel on the entire Sonos fiasco and what actually happened when they changed the app. But have you noticed, Sonos are not alone here. There are so many app developers that do not update the change logs at all, but have a latest version of the app to update at a regular interval, almost weekly or bi-weekly intervals. And we as an user expected to auto-update the app, or by default at the Play Store or the App Store, everything is set to auto-update by default, and we will get the latest and greatest version of the apps without getting the transparency into what we are updating, why we are updating, and why the update makes sense for us. So let me show you what I mean. So I've got my iPad, my iPhone, and my Android here, and we're going to go through the App Store updates and the change logs on some of the apps as an example, see whether there's any consistency, any transparency, and who are getting away with it. But let's see who makes an effort to actually be a bit more transparent with their users. So let's start off with the iPad. I can see Microsoft Excel, they have quality and performance improvements, Word quality and performance improvements, and that's two apps from Microsoft pretty much saying the same thing. I mean, it doesn't say much. Then I've got some Notes app, the Notion says bug fixes, performance improvements. Slack says, Slack actually gives you bunch of updates on iOS, which is great to see. X again they've made improvements, doesn't give you much. Reddit is the same thing. And then when you come down to the Google apps, it says bug fixes and improvements. And you can see like some of the app developers are just taking us for a ride. Google are like notorious offenders of some of these things, including like YouTube Studio, Google Chrome. Again, if you look at Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, they all say the same thing. There's hardly anything, right? So if you look at apps like Zoom, it will tell you, actually, if you click on what's new, you see they've actually listed over 20 items on what they're changing. And this is amazing to see. This is the level of transparency that we're expecting the app developers to have. So on my iPhone, I've got apps like the Mega. Everyone's gone with bug fixes and improvements. There's Hue lighting that I'm using. The Hue lights have actually listed 4 or 5 things that they're changing. And then if you come down, Canva, like one of the major apps for editing, they don't say anything. Google Documents again say bug fixes and improvements. Let's look at YouTube Music, right? Nothing. Amazon, nothing there. Facebook says we've improved performance, fixed bugs, resolved crashes. Like no one knows what they're doing. Google Maps is pretty much said the same thing for many years. Reddit, again, same changelog, same message across the iPad and on iPhone. You get the message here. Like, look, the bunch of Google stuff in here in terms of Google Drive, Google Mini, Google Keep, Google Meet. They all say the same thing. Like, what is Google updating in here? It would be good for the users to know, right? These are supposed to be the guardians, like Amazon, Google. The big tech companies are supposed to be the guardian in terms of transparency and everything, and they do not actually mention anything, which annoys me the most. Let's move on to the Android, the S25 Ultra, and I've got 54 apps pending to update. Amazon Shopping, what's new, that seems to be a very generic message. Android Auto seems very generic. Blockbust, what's new? I mean, these guys, the gaming guys, I will come to them. They leave them really empty. Blue Sky, and you can see they've listed the updates, and this is exactly what I'm looking for. Brave Browser, they've listed again. I mean, some guys are doing really good job in terms of explaining it. Again, Canva just left them empty. Like, if you see Canva on the iPhone, it's basically just one line in terms of saying, hey, thank you for updating the app, sort of thing. And then on Android, nothing even there. Let's look at some of the Google apps. This is supposed to be the Google ecosystem, and Google have basically went with, same message across the board. The Google app one says the same. Google Chat again, the same, let's just go. So across all of the Google apps here, only the Google Meet has, okay, does it, okay. Only Google Meet has any meaningful updates listed in here. So you get the gist here, like there's 3 different devices, but there's just no consistency across the board. And I can understand why there isn't any consistency, because an update for an iPad would be handled by a different team compared to the iPhone and the Android. The stakeholders might not have all the information to paste it in there. And, in most cases, sometimes, it's just laziness comes into play. And in some cases, they just don't want to update anything because they don't want competitors copying them. But is it really true? So I've got 2 exceptions when it comes to auto updating the app. I will always auto update my banking and security apps like VPN, because you want to prevent yourself from phishing attacks, and you don't want you want your money to be secure. So I would always recommend any banking apps update that, and I would not expect banking apps or security apps to have their updates listed in there for privacy reasons. But outside of that, it doesn't make any sense why there would be just meaningless regular updates in the name of improving the apps, but does it actually improve the apps? You might ask, why does it matter? Why have I done a video just talking about this? I think it matters a lot to us, mainly because we're living in a world where there is millions of data points about one individual person being shared across many different partners and vendors that an app work with. For example, when you're logging in, an app will need the login information to verify it's you. But at the same time, who are they passing the information to? Who else is taking advantage of the information? Who else is looking at your user interaction and behavior to package up something else for you? In most cases, app developers are tracking all of this information and then making changes based on some of the usages. Most of the time, there are positive changes in terms of this is what the users are using, let's improve that. But on some scenarios, some app developers can move features that are readily available to you free of use behind a paywall. And I've seen this happen so many times, and it's catching people off guard, just similar to the Sonos scenario. So let's take YouTube for example. Have you seen how many updates that they made recently, but the UI has looked the same? Yeah, like they might have changed the red into pink recently, and added new probably positions for ads and stuff like that. And some of the changes are being pushed in terms of improving algorithms and whatnot. But the only change that I've noticed in YouTube is the number of ads have gone up. And the only way for them to actually push more ads and create more ad slot is by forcing an app update on you. So if you're clever enough and if you notice what's happening, you wouldn't update it. The work that Google doing on AI would also have to be packaged in and forced into as a new update. So without you knowing, you're actually updating a version of the app that's going to be more power hungry and it's going to drain your battery. It might not perform as well as it's done. I mean, if you really want to update it, I would probably get you to read the user review, but user reviews across different ecosystems are different. People from the iOS don't actually leave a lot of feedback compared to the users from Android. And lastly, it should matter to you because it's your personal data. There needs to be transparency, and there needs to be a two-way dialogue between the app developers and users like us in terms of what's actually happening and why we need to do it and what is the value proposition that you're getting to update the app. If you ask me who's really bad at doing that, like look at Google. Like even in their own ecosystem, they are not giving any updates. They're just literally keeping their users blind. You've got Amazon pretty much saying the same thing, and we know how big Amazon is in terms of affiliates, and they track you everywhere you go in terms of what you're searching for and to give you all this sort of relevant advertising and relevant products. So you are being tracked, but they don't really tell you what they are doing to the app. Like Uber, it's another thing. Like almost every big tech apps or every big tech company is basically releasing an update without telling you. So if there is a meaningful update, if there are updates that's worth celebrating and showing off, the app developers and the tech companies are willingly doing that. And that shows every other update that doesn't have it. It's basically, it could be a bug fix, but it is basically something that's been put in there to harvest our data, store our data, and potentially pass our data to somebody else. Do you really want that to happen behind the scenes? So I just want to round this up by saying what should be done. With everyone sort of investing a lot on AI, like Google, Amazon, and pretty much everyone is investing in AI, why can't they use the AI to actually give a summary of the actual update logs? If you look at what Google are doing in the AI space, you can see on Google search they provide an AI overview. They've got the Gemini app that is quite powerful in terms of how we can interact with people and bring up search and power the search in a different way. And you can see on YouTube, you already see AI is trying to summarize the video and auto dub and stuff like that. So there are technology that is readily available that they could take advantage of that. I mean, Samsung could do that on their own version of the Play Store as well. Just take the AI technology and put something in there. The AI should be able to power some of these things and address some of the resource issues and stakeholder management problems that they might have across the board. They could do that. Or they could split their app updates into major and minor updates. Maybe the updates that happen at a regular interval, they could then say, okay, these are minor updates, these are bug fixes and improvements. And then you wait for the major update. Or provide links to what the actual updates do. So for example, Apple do this nicely. When they have an update, they actually provide a link. They actually list every little thing that they're changing, and then they also leave you a link if you want to click on that to actually read more about everything else that's being released, and you can do that. And Apple have championed this for some time. So I'm disappointed to actually see why in App Store, in iOS App Store, Apple are still allowing companies to release apps without any release notes. Lastly, this is to provide transparency and build a trust with your consumer base. We live in a day and age where the trust is just being lost, and no one's really trusting anybody out there because everyone's just doubtful of what's going on. You can see that with the level of services that are being provided across the board anyway. I just want to end this video by saying, I don't think there's a big conspiracy theory in terms of, look, every app updates is harvesting our data or passing our data or doing something. And I don't think every app developers or the app publishers are bad actors. But I do really think that the big tech companies need to lead the way in terms of providing more transparency. And if it is, just laziness, or, you just don't want to give too many details because it just doesn't matter to the users, I completely understand that. I think in most scenarios, I think that is what is happening. Like, the information is not shared with us because it just won't make any sense to say, oh, we've made the color code, blah, 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 this and that. And I completely get that. But if you're an app developer watching this, and if you think I've got this completely wrong, do leave a comment. I'd be interested to have a look at that. But if you like videos like this, do like the video, do follow the channel, and then I'll see you in the next one. Take care.